Hi there. I can see my light. That's probably not such a good view for you. I'll turn you around a little bit this way. And you haven't got the light in your eyes. How you all doing? Great, great. Lovely to see you all. It's really, really quite warm here today. And I've got, I'm doing live on Facebook because not everybody was able to get on the Zoom call. I did actually cut the numbers off on that because I just didn't want it to be too large a group. So I promised a few people that I would recap what I did yesterday. Well, recap, but just go over a few things, and then obviously move on to our next stage in the painting that we did, because yeah, I just thought it'd be fair for the people that weren't on the Zoom call. A lot of people applied to me a bit late and that, and I wasn't able to get them on. So yeah, Zoom's interesting. I mean, it's a great platform for sharing things, across the internet, and because you can do it live rather than a pre-recorded video, which sometimes feels a little static. It's nice to sort of be in there to see it happening, and also how things are resolved. And I think my first hi Andrew, thanks for your help too. I think my first point today is, not everything goes right in the studio. It really, that is the thing with live demos, and sometimes it doesn't really work out the way you intended, and you have to go with what's happening with your painting. Number one, that is always what we're all about as artists, and that is working with what's in front of us and being a little bit relaxed, I think, about the painting process. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves, and especially at this time, during this lockdown, it's been impossible to focus all the time on your artwork. And I look for little activities around my studio, just vacuuming and sorting out my pastels and putting them all into colors, just to have just a bit of a break from it, really, but still be involved in that thinking creatively about what I want. And so please don't put pressure on yourselves to feel that you have to create. I just set up these demos just as a chance for people to walk into my studio very naturally, just me as I am every day, and just be a part of my setup. So that's what the demos were really what I had in mind anyway. I didn't actually sort of think they'd end up as teaching demos. They're just what I do, and so I'm just doing what I do, and then explaining through that how I go about what I'm doing. So, I'm not inventing this stuff. This is, a lot of this stuff is in textbooks anyway. So it's just, how do you put these ideas into practice? That's what I really want to show people, because it's great, doing all these learning videos and all that sort of stuff. But, how do you take it from just someone teaching you technique and putting it into a painting, so that you can watch me working and you get a chance to see how how an artist would take that learning information in a workshop and put it into their work. So, a lot of what I'm showing you, my photographs and all the information I'm showing you, is my personal stuff. It takes me a long time, to gather all my reference photos and things like that. So I think if you are following the demos, try and use your own material. And it'll make you a better painter anyway, but try and translate what I'm doing into your own practice, what you're already doing. So don't feel that it's kind of a jump somewhere else that you've got to then come back to your own work. Always keep yourself at the center of your work. And we're told not to be selfish, but hey, art is selfish. It's about self. It's about what you feel inside, and you're communicating that to your people out there. Hi Valerie, lovely to see you. Hi Cheryl, great. And I think Beatrice, come esta? Lovely to see you. So we're going to just have a first little look at something, not probably what you expected, but something colourful from me. So that makes the first, I think. So I was working on this the other day. Now I had leftover paint from a painting that we'd been working on. So it was all going really, really well. Hi Liz, nice to see you. Everything was going really, really well. I just grabbed one of these linen boards, which is what I've been working on. So I just grabbed one of those, and you know, it's just straight out of the plastic packet, and I started painting on it. And then later on I tried to put on another layer onto it, and you'll see over here that the paint came off. Ciao, 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 Beatrice. So I wanted to show you this because, you know, not everything goes right in painting, and part of our job as artists is to problem solve our way through things that happen. So, you know, one of the things I've been talking about a lot, and we did it yesterday, is using the clear gesso. All right, using the clear gesso, maybe with a little bit of marble dust, so we keep the linen colour. But if you don't use this, that's what happens. Okay, so I was thinking, oh, these things are really improved, it's modern technology, I can just get in there and paint with the leftover acrylic paint after the end of the demo, it'll be fine. And it wasn't fine. So, you know, if you are using these, I would recommend the clear gesso with the marble dust, which will sink into all these grooves. There's a plasticky coating on this that when it comes out of the factory, and you know, the paint doesn't adhere to it. Actually, Lee was talking to me that acrylic loves acrylic, and I think that's nailed it. Acrylic loves acrylic. This is clear gesso is acrylic, an acrylic binder. And so you actually need to put a layer of that on, and the little particles will kind of go into the grooves a little bit, and that'll help your paint to stick on top. Otherwise it will come off. So yeah, that's right, Eileen, the canvas wasn't primed. I didn't follow my own rules, and look what happened. So how do I resolve this? The best place to probably start is to get a palette knife and just scrape off as much as you can. Then I use these little very light sanding blocks, and I would come in, you know, and give that a sand. Okay. Just, you know, if there was anything else loose, anything like that, give that a good sand. Sorry, that was a horrible noise, but it's just to show you. Then I would get my clear gesso, and you know, I would give the whole painting a coat of that. And I would use a baby wipe. Okay, I don't want to use a brush. I don't want to risk a brush lifting off any more paint. But I would just get in there, just very delicately, and with that baby wipe, just rub that clear gesso all over that painting, like so. And that will hopefully seal, at least seal you know, seal this layer on so that I can paint on top. So I'm just going through this because I think, you know, sometimes these things can happen to you and you don't know. And the problem is, if I just carried on painting and thought, oh, well, it doesn't really matter, more and more of this would lift off. And you'd get to, say, one of your lovely final layers, and then it would lift off. And then you go, oh, I've got a big hole in my painting, which is what happens. You end up with a massive hole, and then you're trying to fill it. So, you know, so nothing else was coming off, but I've just rubbed that gesso. I might even go, when that's dry, I might even go another layer with that gesso. Okay, so if you have problems with these boards, you can see some other paint has lifted off here. So I'll let this dry and I'll give it another go with the gesso. Another reason that can happen is if you put acrylic paint down too thinly on a board like this, there's not enough binder in the paint. Is what I've been talking about, perhaps with using too much solvent in oil paint. But if you dilute your paint too much, the binder is too thin to hold to anything. And I was just using up the leftover paint on my palette. And so, you know, I was just being a bit cheap, really. I didn't have enough binder on the paint, so it hasn't stuck. So I'll let that dry off and I'll come back in again with another layer of clear gesso. But so if you ever get peeling on your paintings, it can happen. That's how I would go about trying to resolve that. And yeah, hopefully we don't have too many little experiences like that, but you know, it does happen. The other thing, this is about 40 centimeters square. It's about as large as I would ever paint on one of these boards. After that, they can warp. I don't do anything. I mean, there's, you know, you can see there's, you know, it's got paper on the back, but you know, it's not. I don't think it's meant for putting too watery stuff on it. I think it's better off, you know, trying to work dry on these rather than wet. I think if you wanted to work wet, perhaps canvas would be better, but that would be problematic for the oil and cold wax. It wouldn't be enough to hold it. So there's just a little discussion on that. And for those of you joining today that weren't on the Zoom class, this is basically what I did on another painting, but this was an underpainting I painted, just getting these values of darks and lights so that I could then work on with my next layers. Yeah, I'll read that later, Lee. I think that's right. There are different types of gessos and clear binders you can use. But I've just found the Liquitex one, for me, you know, works extremely well. And, you know, if I had followed my own advice and not painted it straight out of the plastic packet, we would not be looking at that. But I wanted to share that with you because, you know, often you think, oh, it always goes right for people, but it doesn't always go right for people. Okay, so here's what we were working on yesterday. So what I've done here is, so we had all the darks down yesterday, for those of you that weren't here. So we did the darks. Now what I've done is I've scumbled a light white gesso, actually, over the acrylic. Just pushed it all back a bit, neutralized the whole thing. So these reds aren't so red, but you know, when I scrape through, we will still see the reds. And where I want the lights for the Queen Anne's lace, cow parsley, then we've got that too. Now what happens when I roll the gesso over the board, what happens is where we've put, I don't know if you saw this or remember this, but I got the squeegee and I made lines with clear gesso. And I put the clear gesso with the marble dust, you know, where these cow parsleys are. And I also made some of these marks, some of these sort of branchy things, these stems. I made those with the clear gesso as well. Now when I get that white roller and I roll over the top, what it does is it picks that up and you get this. So you're getting a kind of three-dimensionality on there. Let me try and zoom in. There we are. You can see this one quite clearly where it's just the white paint has picked up on the clear gesso. And there's a lot more of that clear gesso down there. There's something here. And you can see where I've just scratched into it. And it just picks up where the clear gesso was. So that just creates a little bit of texture and it sort of guides us as to, you know, where we're going with the painting. Yeah, the paintings do change. So you know, that's where we are with that. Now we're ready to go into this with a bit of oil painting. I could carry on with acrylic, you know, a bit more, but I just I think I'd be just, you know, messing about. And I just wanted to just show you this step, because this is step 1.5, is that velatura stage I'm always gabbling on about, but it's where we add a veil. So here I've added the veil, but I've also brought out some of the features as well. Okay, now the next stage is to decide you know, our sort of color palette for this painting, because we're then going to be glazing it as well. So I'm going to start with the blue violets, and I'll again put them up there. I'll get my gloves out today. Don't worry about gloves so much for acrylics, but just for the oil paints, just makes my hands a little cleaner. And I'm going to just get that over the can't manage the camera with gloves on, that's the unfortunate thing. So. And a little bit of the cerulean blue. And cerulean blue and cad orange make a grey. All right. So let's just so we've got that sort of very misty bluey grey there. That's the cerulean blue and the orange, which is a lovely sort. It makes a, you could go anywhere with that grey. You wanted to make it cooler or warmer, and you know, I'm just going to bring that in over here. And so because we have a lot of this composition marked in, you know, it just makes it easier to just keep building up these colours. And wherever else I might feel that grey might be, you know, maybe a little bit in here. And again, leaving that red to come through, because I'm going to have to leave this to dry, and then next week's Zoom call will be glazing this painting, but it will have to dry for a few days at least to let this oil. Now I haven't got any wax in here at the moment. I just want the paint, just so I can get these tonal values in there. You know, this could be anything. This could actually be water. This would actually work very well as the edge of a river coming out here. If I wanted to change this from cow parsley to river, you know, it would also work really, really well. Now, it's also quite nice to work in a little bit of warmth at the top here over that red. So I've just popped that warm colour in up here. So we have a transition from warm to cool. Again, I've just scumbled that in just to keep the warmth of it going. And then, of course, down here we've got the stronger red. I might not need to add anything to that. It doesn't. Sometimes, you know, I'll leave that acrylic, you know, pretty much like that, and just paint more into it. So as I'm working. Now this is quite a light value, and I'm deciding whether I'm going to do this as cow parsley or a piece of river, because I quite like the idea of sort of making that into you know, into water. It would look quite effective. So I'll deal with that first. So I'll deal with the sky, and again, King's Blue in up there to come in over that yellow. So I'm keeping the warm and cool colours separate, so I'm just painting the cool colours first again. So these are just blues out on my palette now, and I will put the warmer colours in afterwards. I'm going to just add a little magenta actually. That's a Winsor & Newton one. Just beef out this one here. So just make that a little bit more stronger there. It could bring that colour across here. I sort of see that or feel that violet. I'll put that in now. Just in the way that it catches the light down here as well. So you're really a storyteller. I'm telling a story here of something. Really, it's become something from my imagination now more than anything else. See if I like this as water first. So I think I do. There's a nice feel to it. It's just how a river would flow in that sort of direction. Can you see how these raised bits of gesso with the oil paint just sit beautifully over that surface? And I'm having no trouble with lifting as well. So this paint isn't lifting, not like what it did on the other one. So you really do need to prime these boards before you work quite thoroughly to get the best out of them. Now, just make sure I've got my lines going that way. Just disappearing off and standing back all the time and having a look at, you know, how I feel about that. Decision making, really, it's quite tiring. And you're always thinking about, you know, what to put here and what to put there, and you know, a friend of mine, David Tress, he gets up in the morning at 6 o'clock and he paints till midday, and then that's it. And he does other things during the day. I think, you know, there's something to be said for that routine, because it is exhausting. The rest of the day he's probably drawing and doing his, you know, things that have to be done as an artist, or follow-up phone calls and marketing stuff and all the rest of it that goes on, and just going out for a walk, really. Otherwise you are in the studio from dawn till dusk, and it's not that healthy. So I'm just going to now work with some of these warmer colours, and I'm just going to add that in, just adding a little bit of this so because the palettes are separate, you know, it just keeps this yellow really clean, and that's quite nice at this stage. You know, it might end up like a murky painting, but it's nice to have that at some stage to enjoy. Bring that down here as we have the light sort of just coming and catching on there. becoming more like cow parsley now, which is interesting. And that's interesting, because we've got this, I did have that terracotta colour under there, so I toyed with the idea of making it a river. I'll go back to my original idea. It's nice to be able to play around and respond to your work as the work's telling you, and feel, okay, that was nice. Can you see how the paint is catching on the gesso and marble dust? You just get this lovely just thinking of the light and the warmth. Where am I going to find it in this painting? Maybe a few of these underneath, you know, might have some of that colour, and I might even put some of that shady blue under here, because that just make that fit in a little better. Okay. So I'm using my soft watercolour brush here today. That's the Richardson watercolour brush. I think it's about 1 inch. They're great. Really love these. I go through quite a lot of them though. Scratching away with the gesso and the marble dust is not so good for your brushes. I'm just going to palette knife in a little bit of interest in here. Just got a tiny bit of magenta in that white. Just where it's catching the light here, and I'll add more paint in up there later as well. That's my daughter practicing the saxophone, if you're wondering what that sound is. So I'll just add that in there. It's quite nice to see her playing an instrument again. She hasn't really played it that much since she left school. But, you know, we've been doing some sort of piano duet, saxophone-y kind of evenings to pass the time. But it's quite fun. We do it by Zoom call. So my son's learning the violin, and he's 30. Yeah, so we've got one son learning the violin, we've got my daughter doing the saxophone, my husband's learning to play the piano, and so we have these funny Zoom calls where we all get together and play something to each other. I'm not doing much piano playing these days. I think I'm retired from my sins after teaching in school for 25 years music and art. So, okay, we have. So you know, you can use this is the oil paint, so it's, you know, got a lot of body to it, and you know, where I've had that lovely gesso ground, you know, it's just picking up all these patches. So you might think that it's not worth putting the gesso ground down, but it just builds up this composition and surface texture. I just treat it as part of my drawing. The texture is part of the underneath drawing of the painting. squeegee here. I just bring down this sort of light, like raking light, you know, just that. This is all going to be glazed, so this is just coming in over here. You can only be fussy to a point. It's not an exact science, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately. It's the way the paint works makes it more interesting, actually. So again, I can get you know, a baby wipe or something like that, and I can soften those edges like so. Bring out the form a bit. Yeah. Can give it some directional light by wiping into it. I really feel like that's going to be light coming through the back of the trees here, so I can, you know, come in at an angle. As I say, you know, you've probably got images of your own that you can use to describe this, and you know, just have a play around. You know, there's no quick fix for any composition really. It can go in any direction at any time, and it's just feeling confident that I've got enough paint down there to tell the story. Now that's reading quite nicely back there. That's a little dark, but that's okay. So I'm just going to palette knife a little bit of orange brown over that blue just to lighten or warm it up. It's just a little cold in there. I want this to be the cold part of the painting. It's warm and cool on either side, like so. Just almost as if these things are catching the light up there. So they need to be a bit warmer. And I can get some green, maybe a mix of phthalo green. So I've just got the Williamsburg there. I love this phthalo green. This is my favourite. I've used all sorts of phthalo greens. You wouldn't think that they vary from one to the other, but there is something about this one that I particularly like. It's strong, but it's not unpleasant, if that makes any sense. I'm just going to bring that dark green in here. So they say no waxing at this stage, and sometimes, you know, it doesn't need a lot of cold wax anyway. Might be a clear layer of cold wax. Let's just get that in. As much as possible. What's the time? Yep, 1:30. So let's just get this in. I'm referring to my photographs as well, which I did in black and white. Okay, so tonal value wise, you know, it's dark at the top left. It's not so dark down the bottom left. So when I'm looking at photographs, when I'm looking at images, I'm always thinking, you know, to have my four corners with a little bit of interest that are slightly different, okay? So each corner here really has a different value. So we've got, you know, darkest, two mids, you know, dark mid, light, mid, and light. No, it's kind of call that light, but it's kind of a scumbled, kind of hazy light. It's different to what's happening here and there. So these corners speak to each other and have a conversation. We don't have something, for example, that's the same here or the same there. That red against that blue, or that orangey red against that blue, you know, complementary colours. So they create an interesting dynamic, don't they? And this purple going across to this yellow too. You know, you've got a colour conversation going on as well as a tonal conversation. So you've got both. You've got everything sort of happening to hold it together. Now I'm just going to do a little solvent pour and call it a day there. So I just need to get that. And what I was saying before is, you know, I like to have it on a little bit of an angle. Just so I can bring in those. Make sure it doesn't fall off. And run this at different angles as well as we're coming down. As I say, this is the last thing I do, because then this has to set up. Squeeze a bit of a wipe. So what I'll do overnight is, once this is, or during the week, once this is dry, I'll put a layer of clear cold wax over the whole painting. And then the next layers that I'll add on will be oil paint with cold wax. And we'll be ready to glaze by Thursday. I might do another live on this sometime during the week when it's dry. And just do a few more layers on it, I think. So, a paper towel. And so this won't be a big cut like what we've done before. But you can see the red coming through. A bit hard to see in the way the light's catching this. So that's now master green over the red, and here we have some of that red now coming back through from that dark green. And that's just going to, that is actually, in some ways, now this green's acting as a glaze. Okay. And I can, you know, push it along a little bit already to tell me, you know, where these stems are going to be. Just doing it upside down a little bit for some reason. Let's move them. So I can move them as well. But, you know, I'm starting to push that paint into where I want it to go. So, see how I'm, can you see that? So I'm moving that squeegee, and it's hitting where that line of gesso was that we put down yesterday. So it's hitting that, and it's pooling in the little groove, and it'll form a stem. It'll settle down there, and it'll form a stem. You just have to leave it to dry. And I'll go back to one I did earlier, because that becomes confusing. So you can see it a little better. So this is dried off a little bit, and you can see some of these stems here. That one there. That dark green is pushed up against that clear gesso, and you get this feeling of a stem. All right, so I've got different sorts of stems here. That's a gesso stem, and then I've got other stems that are painted in, and others that are formed by negative space. And then I've just marked in with the negative space in there. So, you know, this is kind of what we're aiming for, and I'm aiming to glaze this one as well. It hasn't got there yet. I'm waiting for it to dry, because they have to be 100% dry before you glaze them. But I'm happy with that. I think that's looking quite interesting after going from water to cow parsley. Oh, thanks, Helen. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Yep, that was solvent. Lovely. Any other questions? Thank you. Thanks for doing the links, because I haven't got a spare pair of hands for you people that are so good at sharing the links. There's different types of bowl scrapers, actually. There is the Messermeister, and then there's also a Zoe Chloe one, which is very similar as well. Again, I think that's American as well, that one there. So that's another brand. That's slightly bigger than the Messermeister. Works just as well, but it's slightly bigger. And then, of course, there's the cold wax products that you can buy through Rebecca and Jerry. That they also sell them. Okay, everybody, that is super. So I'm going to let that dry off for a little while, and you know that will take about that could take 3 days. So that'll be over the weekend. I won't be able to get to that till about Tuesday, and then then I'll have to get in again with the cold wax and leave that to dry, and then we'll be ready for Thursday's Zoom to do the glazing. So everybody that's on the Zoom already will be on the Zoom next Thursday. You don't have to turn up, but you will get the invite. If you haven't had an invitation, get hold of me either on this news feed, or I'll try and find it. But if you can, not message me in my artist messenger box, because it's full of rubbish. And I got to kind of trail through all the people that are sort of asking different things, and I miss people. I just miss people, or sometimes it ends up on the wrong thread and I just miss you. So yeah, if you could just keep it to this feed, put your names down there. All my website is reliable as well, so that's cool. All right, thank you for watching, and I'll see you. Have a good weekend, everybody, and don't work too hard. Just relax and just make the most of the sunshine, and we'll see you again. Bye for now.